Well, it wasn't exactly how you want to script the 75th anniversary season. However, for the 16th straight season, we're going to the playoffs. You know what I mean? As it's time for another episode of... Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to another episode of my Calgary Stampeders this month. Here we're up to Season 3. This will be episode number 5, as we are going to talk about November, as how did my Calgary Stampeders do in November to wrap up the 2021 CFL Regular season. As I gave a clue there, we did manage to make the playoffs after all. As if you would have asked me a couple months ago, after the Hamilton game in September, when we were 2-5, I was a little down on that team and looked a little intimidated with October. Well, fast forward a couple months later, we are in the playoffs for the 16th straight season, which is the longest in franchise history. After we got the F troop out of here, things have been respectable and competitive again for the Calgary Stampeders. But we still had a couple more games to play, and we'll map out and show you the road to the 108th Grey Cup, as at least that has been constructed going to Hamilton. So before I go on my notes, as I say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, home the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders. I mostly do talk youth sports, Calgary sports and youth channel, and I do have my second channel in Brett Hornby Shorts, where I post my short form content on there. Let's say, for example, how the Calgary Stampeders do right after the game. So I'll go bring my notes and let's talk about how November went for my Calgary Stampeders, and then we'll get to some more business with league leaders and looking ahead to, as I said, the road to the 108th Grey Cup. So November, week 14, the Calgary Stampeders had a bye, which was their second of 2 bye weeks. Each team had 2 bye weeks. So Calgary had the first week of November off, but after they lost that game to the Saskatchewan Roughriders, it looked like, with the strength of the schedule and that the Calgary Flames were likely going to be going on the road for the playoffs. But it also set up, which will be week 15, which will be the next game. And week 15, the next game, this was on Friday, November the 12th, as the Calgary Stampeders were taking on the BC Lions on the road at BC Place. This was an 8:30 p.m. kickoff. And after how everything shook down in week 14, it turned out that if the Calgary Stampeders win this game, or their last game of the regular season, the Calgary Stampeders would clinch themselves a playoff spot. And I think I've already let the cat out of the bag, or the horse out of the bag in this case. We did clinch a playoff spot. Was it in this game? And then also, I have not mentioned this yet, but Reggie Begelton is back with the Calgary Stampeders, as we did sign him during week 14, as he got released from the Green Bay Packers. He was trying his luck with the Green Bay Packers, and boy, it's great. We got Reggie Begelton back. Yes, he's wearing number 86, but he looks better red and white than green and gold for the Green Bay Packers. So he did make his re-debut with the Calgary Stampeders in this game. So, how did things go? Well, Calgary did win the opening toss in this one, but they decided to defer, thinking to try to get a good stop. However, it looked like that maybe that decision could have backfired, because the BC Lions opening drive, they moved the ball well, as Michael Riley connected with Brian Burnham and James Butler on big plays. As the BC Lions knew, they lost 6 in a row coming in this game, that they were playing for their playoff lives in this one. BC got down to the Calgary 6-yard line, but they could not get into the end zone. So they had to settle for a field goal, and now BC, they're down to Nick Vogel for kicking field goals, as it's been the venture at the BC Lions this season for kickers. He was good from 13 yards out. So BC, with their opening drive, opened up with a 3-0 lead, but it felt like BC could have had more on how they looked at the start there. So maybe the Calgary Stampeders could take advantage. Well, now on the kickoff, Calgary had the ball starting at their own 42-yard line. This was with 11 minutes to go in the first quarter, so BC took some time off with their opening drive. And on the first play, Bowie connected to Reggie Begelton on a 38-yard play to get into BC territory. This is where we have to say Reggie Begelton is back with the Calgary Stampeders. And then I say Calgary got into BC territory for a first and goal. And then on a 2nd and 2, it was Levi Mitchell. He connected to Markeith Ambrose for a touchdown. So after the point after, Calgary had a 7-3 lead with just over 6 minutes to go in the first quarter. So Calgary on their opening drive scored a touchdown. Next drive for BC Lions, they got a couple of strong running plays from both Michael Riley and James Butler. As Michael Riley, he's definitely a good scrambler if he doesn't have any options to throw the ball. Eventually BC got stopped on the Calgary 32-yard line and settled for another field goal. So Nick Vogel was good from this time 39 yards out. So now we have a 7-6 game for Calgary with 1:17 to go in the first quarter. Calgary had the ball at midfield going into the second quarter. And then on that drive going into the second quarter, Calgary facing a 3rd and 2 on the BC 47-yard line. Calgary went for it as Jake Muir, he looked for Reggie Begelton instead of going for a sneak, but it was a 3rd and 2. No good, so Calgary had the turnover on downs. BC on the next drive actually took advantage of that, as it was Michael Riley connected to Shaq Johnson on a 50-yard play to get into Calgary territory. BC now facing the 1st and goal. In Calgary territory, Michael Riley, he looked for Brian Burnham in the end zone, but was not successful. However, BC did pull out the challenge flag, and they challenged the pass interference, and it was successful. So now BC had the ball 1st and goal on the 1, and ultimately it was backup quarterback Nathan Rourke who ran in for the touchdown. Now with the point after conversion, BC now had a 13-7 lead with 8.5 minutes to go in the second quarter. Calgary on their next drive, they started on their own 38-yard line after the kickoff and got a drive going, aided on Reggie Begelton. He definitely didn't look like he missed a beat after not being in the CFL for almost 2 years. Hayden was involved in a rushing play too. After Calgary called a timeout just before the 3-minute warning, Bo connected to Reggie Begelton on a 15-yard play for a touchdown. Though things were starting to look and feel right with Reggie Begelton back in the lineup for the Calgary Stampeders. However, Rene Paredes, he was perfect on point after conversions. Actually was not good on this one. So we have a 13-13 game at the 3-minute warning of the second quarter. BC in the next drive ended up with a 2-and-out. Calgary did challenge for a fumble recovery, but was not successful at the BC 48-yard line. Calgary in the next drive had the ball with just over 2 minutes to go before halftime on their own 29-yard line. Calgary got to the BC yard line and punted the ball with 35 seconds to go. However, BC looked to have the ball caught with too many men, so BC turned the ball over back to Calgary after they had too many men on the punting play. So Calgary had the ball back, this time on the first down on the 38-yard line. I think I meant to put 48-yard line when they punted. And then BC had too many men on the field. It's only funny when Saskatchewan has too many men on the field. By the way, that made it first down in Calgary at the BC 38-yard line. Calgary ran a couple more rushing plays, and Rene Paredes, he kicked a 35-yard field goal to end the first half. So Calgary took a 16-13 lead at halftime. Took advantage of the mistake by the BC Lions with too many men. So Calgary received the kickoff to start off the second half, and maybe that decision to defer might have actually helped them in this case, as Calgary had a fast start. Starting at their own 39-yard line, Calgary had a big play as Bo connected with Kamar Jordan on a 71-yard play, moving Calgary down to the BC 6-yard line, and then Kadeem Carey, the running back, he ran a 6-yard play in for the touchdown on the point after. So Calgary now had a 23-13 lead with 12:45 to go in the third quarter. So things are now starting to look good that we will clinch a playoff spot in this game. However, on the next drive, BC got stopped. First, Richard Leonard had a sack, and then Sean Lemon on the next play had a sack and forced the fumble that Demi Bergman recovered. Calgary then got the ball on the BC 49-yard line. And Calgary did take advantage of the turnover by kicking the field goal as the Rene Paredes. Eventually, after all that, Calgary was good from 44 yards after not getting moved the ball from there. So Calgary now had a 26-13 lead. This with 8.5 minutes to go in the third quarter. So Calgary scored a quick 10 points in the third quarter. BC on the next drive, aided on plays by Dominic Grimes and Lucky Whitehead, got down to the Calgary 30-yard line, but they had to settle for a vehicle as Nick Vogel kicked a 37-yard field goal. So now we have a 26-16 game for Calgary. Just under 5 minutes to go in the third quarter. Calgary next drive ended on a 2-and-out, and BC had the ball going into Calgary territory. Going into the fourth quarter, Calgary still up by 10 points. BC kept pressing the Calgary territory with Javon Cody receptions, and eventually Michael Riley connected Javon Cody on a 16-yard play, and eventually he was on a touchdown. So after the point after convert, BC now had a 26-23 lead for Calgary, just over 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Actually, I should say it was 23 Calgary for Calgary. After another Calgary drive that went with a punt, Lucky Whitehead for BC looked like he returned a punt for a touchdown. However, what happened was the penalty was wiped out on a holding. So instead of BC having a punt return for a touchdown after that Calgary field goal, it was now BC started around their own 7-yard line instead of having the touchdown. And this was 7.5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. At this point, 26-23 for Calgary. Calgary stopped BC on a 2-and-out and got a return into BC territory on their own 50-yard line. Bo got a big play on Reggie Begelton to get into the first and goal territory. And then Bo connected with Malik Henry on a 9-yard touchdown pass to make the point after convert. So Calgary now had a 33-23 lead. Or 4.5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. So I felt that after that punt return that got wiped out, that was pretty much the turning point of the game, as it was 26-23 for Calgary at that point, after when BC got back into it. Then that happened and they haven't recovered. So ultimately what happened was that BC in the next drive had a 2-and-out heading into the 3-minute warning, and eventually punted the ball back to Calgary. And then Calgary and BC drives ended with punts, which eventually got down to 34 seconds to go for Calgary, with 34 seconds left on the game to run out the clock. So Calgary ultimately took this one 33-23 to clinch a playoff spot for the 16th straight season, while the BC Lions got eliminated from playoff competition. So after a little bit of a crazy fourth quarter, ultimately the BC Lions lost to the Calgary Stampeders. So Calgary is now in a playoff spot. And ultimately what happened was that the Saskatchewan Roughriders ultimately clinched second in the West Division in Week 14, or 15 I should say. So Calgary knew that they were going to Saskatchewan for the West semifinal once the playoffs begin. So the statistical story for this is Bo was good for 20 for 26. He looked like himself in this one. He had 264 yards passing for 3 touchdowns and an interception. Gideon Carey, he had 15 carries for 85 yards and a touchdown. Reggie Begelton definitely made his return to the Calgary Stampeders. He had 7 receptions for 119 yards and a touchdown. Kamar Jordan had 3 catches for 71 yards. Rene Paredes, he was 2 for 2 for field goals, of 44 yards being his longest. And then Darnell Sankey, he definitely had one heck of a game that gave him a Player of the Week honor. He had 12 tackles and 1 forced fumble. Jamar Wall also had 9 tackles in this game. When it comes to the BC side of the ball, well, Michael Riley, he was 30 of 37. He had 340 yards with 1 touchdown, no interception. James Butler, he had 11 carries for 89 yards on the ground. Dominic Grimes, he had a pretty good game receiving. He had 7 receptions for 111 yards. Javon Catoy, he had 6 receptions for 70 yards and 1 touchdown. That happened in the third quarter. Nick Vogel was 3 for 3 for field goals, 39 being his longest, and Jordan Williams had 7 tackles. So with that win, like I said, Calgary improves to 7-6, 5-2 on the road. and clinch a playoff spot. And after when week 15 was all done, we knew that Calgary was going to finish third no matter what, which sets up kind of a lackluster week 16. Because week 16 just happened on Saturday, November 20th, as the Calgary Stampeders were at home to take on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. That was a 5 p.m. kickoff at McMahon Stadium for the final game of the regular season, and there was no playoff implications for either side, as the Winnipeg Blue Bombers pretty much knew since the Calgary Stampede before the season started that they seemed to have had first place wrapped up. So they were going to be hosting the West Final on Sunday, December 5th, to either take on my Calgary Stampeders or the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Well, the Calgary Stampeders knew that they're going to have to play in the West semifinal in Saskatchewan on Sunday, November 28th, which meant pretty much on both sides a lot of players were either getting rested or getting limited play. So this game actually was kind of a very, very boring defensive struggle, but it had an exciting finish. So for this game, I was able to somewhat cut corners on recapping it, because it was actually kind of a boring game, to be honest with you. Being up in the stands, by the way, Winnipeg won the toss but deferred. So Calgary had the ball first, got a first down, eventually punted it away. Winnipeg next drive also ended with a 2-and-out, so definitely there was a lot of punting going on in this game. This game proved to be a defensive struggle, as many regulars were not in the lineup. Winnipeg had a drive that began on their own 41-yard line with over 9 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Winnipeg got down to the Calgary 2-yard line as Johnny Augustine, thankfully at least picked him on my fantasy for week 16 to pick up some points. He had a big rushing day, as well as Reggie Begelton had a big catching play. However, quarterback, I guess it was their third stringer, because Sean McGuire was not playing in this game because he was injured. It was Drew Brown on a sneak play. He fumbled the ball as Jameer Thurman forced the fumble, and then was Javon Elliott, one of the newcomers on Calgary, returned it for 23 yards. So Calgary had a 2-and-out after that fumble recovery, and then Winnipeg had the ball near midfield going into the second quarter. So even though Winnipeg came close to scoring a touchdown, they did not, as Calgary got the ball back. So we actually had no scoring after the first quarter. So it definitely wasn't really that exciting. As I mentioned, no scoring after the first quarter, as defenses dominated. As I would say in this game, the top two defenses played in this one. Calgary's running game was also non-existent, as we did not dress Kadeem Carey for this one, as we rested him up for the playoffs. Rock Thomas came in and started, and he got injured, and once he got injured, the running game practically was non-existent, but Calgary definitely suppressed the Saskatchewan passing game, at least in this one. Second quarter, not much to report, as nothing really stood out, I should say. John Augustine for Winnipeg had a big half, as he had over 100 yards rushing before halftime. I kept looking like, how many yards does he have? And he already had 100 yards. The only points that were scored in the second quarter and first half was Winnipeg had a kicker in Sergio Castillo, who did spend some time with Hamilton and BC, as Winnipeg also have had some adventurous time with their kicking game, but they have settled with Sergio Castillo down the stretch. He made a 15-yard field goal with 4:46 to go, so Winnipeg had a 3-0 lead. We also mentioned that Sergio Castillo attempted a 52-yard field goal to close out the second quarter and the first half, but was short, so Winnipeg had a 3-0 lead at halftime. And I would say on a rather boring game. I'm going to say, even if you're the hardest core defensive coordinator, or even they would probably say this was a boring game, but it was essentially a preseason game, as both teams were pretty much executing, but preparing for the playoffs without getting injured, if that makes sense. Second half was more the same with the defensive struggle. There was only one first down to Winnipeg in the third quarter, and that was with 8 minutes to go in the third quarter, so there was only one first down halfway through the third quarter. For Calgary, well, Jake Maier played the second half of the game, as Bo played the first half. After Calgary got their first down in the second half, Jake Maier actually did throw an interception to Mike Jones for Winnipeg with 7 minutes to go in the third quarter. And then with Winnipeg on the Calgary 40-yard line for the turnover, Winnipeg was already in field goal range. and they did get a first down, but eventually they did kick a field goal from 45 yards out, as Winnipeg took a 6-0 lead with 5:51 to go in the third quarter. After a couple more punts, Calgary had the ball near midfield heading into the fourth quarter with Winnipeg up 6-0, and then Calgary started off the fourth quarter punting the ball to Winnipeg, where that drive eventually led to another Sergio Castillo field goal, as he was good from 46 yards out. So Winnipeg took a 9-0 lead with 10:45 to go in the fourth quarter. And the way this game I felt was going, we were going to get shut out and we were going to lose like 9 or 12-0, to be honest with you. However, things just hang in there. Things did get exciting towards the end, and maybe set some hope for if we do play these guys in a couple of weeks. Calgary next drive ended with a 2-0, and next Winnipeg drive ended off with another field goal, this time Sergio Castillo. He was good from 50 yards out, so Winnipeg took a 12-0 lead. We have just under 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, so I'm going to say Winnipeg has found their kicker, especially he can kick the long ones. He's proven, as I mentioned, I've seen Sergio Castillo kick with Hamilton and BC, which is kind of funny that BC traded him to Winnipeg when they've had kicking issues. So on the next drive, Calgary got into Winnipeg territory for the first time in the game, as anti-Milovic leader connected on a play, as he was now, might say, the running back after Rock Thomas got hurt. So Calgary got their first points of the game, and as Winnipeg, on their Winnipeg 25-yard line, as Rene Paredes was good from 32 yards out. So we now have a 12-3 game for Winnipeg with 5:12 to go in the fourth quarter. At least we had, yay, points. We did not get shut out. On the next drive to Winnipeg, Calgary held them to a punt, and then Calgary started the next drive on their own 24-yard line. After the 3-minute warning, Calgary got a drive going, setting up an exciting finish. So after the 3-minute warning, if you left this game early, I hope you're kicking yourself. Anyway, first Jake Maier connected on a Colton Hunchuk 13-yard play on a second and long, and then midfield, Calgary facing the 3rd and 7. Essentially, we had to gamble, and I think this was the game right here. Jake Maier, he connected with Luka Akanavu, Hakuna Matata, as he made a 57-yard play for a touchdown, and then the point after convert. We now have a 12-10 game for Winnipeg with 1:43 to go in the fourth quarter. So Calgary scored the first touchdown of the game, but that did not come until with 1:43 to go in the fourth quarter. Then on the kickoff, Winnipeg was stopped on a 2-0, punting the ball back to Calgary with less than a minute to go at midfield on a good return by Reggie Begelton. Then Jake Maier connected with Colton Hunchuk again on a 28-yard play to get well into Winnipeg territory to set up a field goal attempt. After Ante Milovic earlier ran a couple plays, Calgary now attempted a 27-yard field goal with no time left. Unlike the last time when Calgary played Winnipeg, Rene Paredes was good on a field goal. However, I'm going to say it was a little easier to kick it from 27 yards than 52 yards, and Calgary ultimately won this one, 13-12, on a fourth quarter comeback. So maybe we have some hope that we can beat Winnipeg with their defense in the fourth quarter. So what a comeback. It was a boring, dry game, but you're kicking yourself if you left early, as we came back and won this one. That was definitely a nice comeback, and I would say as nice as that field goal was for Rene Paredes, I did enjoy that one just a little more when I was in Regina, because I was in Regina, wearing my red and greenville. But I'd say Calgary won this one 13-12. They finished the season 8-6, third in the West Division. And ultimately, they were 3-4 at home, but they're 5-2 on the road. So I think maybe that could give us an edge in the playoffs, knowing we're going to be on the road the rest of the way. And Winnipeg, they did that last year as they won the Grey Cup, be on the road, so it can be done. So there's a lot of statistical stories to throw around for both sides, because this was kind of like a preseason game. I mean, Bo, he was 7-0 for 11. He only played the first half, but only had 39 yards, but passing yards were tough to come by in this game for both sides. Jake Maier, he played in the second half. He was 10 for 20. He had 177 yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception, but he had 59 of those yards, and that one played Luther Akanavu. When it comes to rushing the ball, well, Ante Milovic leader, he had 8 carries for 27 yards, and Rock Thomas, he had only 4 carries for 12 yards. At least he was good in that return in the first game in BC, but Rock Thomas has been basically on the practice roster all year. When it comes to receivers, well, Luther Akanavaru had that one catch for 57 yards and a touchdown, which brought hope for Calgary to come back. And then Markeith Ambles, he had 5 catches for 45 yards. Colton Hunchuk had 2 catches, 34 yards. Rene Paredes, he was 2 for 2 for field goals, including 32 being the longest. And Darnell Sinke, he had 8 tackles, so that was a lot more stats to go around. Because a lot of players definitely had their opportunities in this game. On the Winnipeg side of the ball, well, actually, Zach Calero started because Sean McGuire was injured. He was 7 for 10, but he only had 73 yards, and no touchdowns, no interceptions, so it was kind of hard to draw conclusions on both Bo and Zach. And then it was Drew Brown, their third stringer. He was 7 for 14 for 49 yards. But the player that stood out, the player of the game, was Johnny Agostine. He had 23 carries for 148 yards. And I'm thinking, is that their third string running back? Because Andrew Harris didn't play. Brady Oliveira, I think, was injured. So Winnipeg still has a pretty good running attack, not with the 2-prong with Chris Traveler. And then Drew Brown, he actually ran for 7 carries for 44 yards. And then comes receivers. Reggie Begelton had 2 catches, 44 yards, and Kenny Lawler had 4 catches, 47 yards. Sergio Castile, he was 4 for 5 for field goals, with the 50 yards being his longest. And Adam Bickel, actually, he led the way in tackles with 4. So other things we'll get to is the award nominees, as the Calgary Stampeders had their award nominees before we get into the off-season business, as they nominated Kadeem Carey for the Most Outstanding Player Award. Mike Rose got the nominee for the Most Outstanding Defensive Player. These are the team nominees. Sean McEwen won the Most Outstanding Defensive Lineman. Rene Paredes for the Most Outstanding Special Teams Player. Derek Wigan for Most Outstanding Canadian. And Isaac Demi Berglund for the Most Outstanding Rookie. So these are the Calgary Stampeders Award nominees. So now if we take a look at the stats and standings, as we'll have a little more time to look at the league leaders as well. Well, ultimately, how the divisions shook down in the West Division. Keep in mind, we only played a 14-game season. Winnipeg finished first, 11-3, but they've lost the last 2 games, but they knew they had the West clinched like a month before the season ended. Saskatchewan, they finished 9-5 for second. Calgary finished 8-6 for third. So the top 3 made the playoffs in the West. Then the BC Lions, they were 5-9, and the Edmonton Elks, they were 3-11. So going out east, the Toronto Argonauts, they won the East Division with a 9-5 record. Then the Hamilton Tiger Cats finished second with 8-6, and then the Montreal Alouettes finished third at 7-7. So the top 3 made the playoffs in the East, while the Ottawa Redblacks finished 3-11. So that's how the playoffs looked. So now if we look at the Calgary Stampeders stats, when it comes to passing, well, Bo was 211 for 325. He had 2,594 yards passing. What it's a little concerning with him, he had 10 touchdowns, but 13 interceptions. His percentage was 64.9%. And then when it comes to Jake Neer, I still think he has a bright future. Always a free agent after this year, and not too sure if we can still keep him or could someone else in the CFL look at him. But Jake Neer, he was 95 for 148. He had 1,211 yards. He threw for 5 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and he had a percentage of 64.2%. Jake Neer, in his 3 starts, he had 3 300-yard games, while Bo only had 1 300-yard game. When it comes to receiving, well, Kadeem Carey, he had 164 yards carries for 869 yards for an average of 5.3%. He had 7 touchdowns. His longest was 29 yards. And he had 2 games over 100 yards. So that was Kadeem Carey. Leading receiver, when it comes to the Calgary Stampeders this year, was Kamar Jordan. Despite missing some time, he had 53 receptions for 706 97 yards for a 14.5% average in yards per catch, 4 touchdowns. Markeith Ambles, he had 54 catches for 686 yards for an average catch of 12.7. 3 touchdowns, and Reggie Begelton, he was third with 29 catches for 284 yards, 9.8 yards per catch. And then Richie Sedani, he had 296 catches for 260 yards. And Colton Hunchuk, he had 16 catches for 247 yards. So I think we do have some depth in receiving. And oh yeah, with this Reggie Begelton guy, he only had 9 receptions for 133 yards and an average of 14.8 yards. Keep in mind it's a small sample size, but Reggie Begelton, you can always count on him for at least that many yards per catch and that 1 touchdown. So when it comes to tackles, well, Darnell Sankey led the way with 97 tackles, and I think that leads the league. We'll take a look at the league leaders. Jameer Thurman had 62 tackles, Raheem Wilson at 52, Brandon Dozer at 49. And when it comes to the sacks, well, Sean Lemon actually led the team with 8 sacks, and then Mike Rose with 7. Stefan Banks had 4, Jameer Thurman had 3. So that's just a quick looking at the tackles. And then when it comes to kicking, well, Rene Paredes, he was 44 for 48 in field goals for the 91.7% percentage. 52 yards being his longest, and he was 23-24 for extra points. But Rene Paredes, I'll definitely remember 2 field goals for sure with the winners. And then when it comes to punting, well, Cody Gracie was averaging 45.6 yards a punt, with 63 being his longest. So that's the Stampeders stats. So now when it comes to the league leaders, the league leader when it comes to passing yards, well, actually that goes to Mike O'Reilly. He had 3,283 yards. Then Zach Claris was second with 3,185 yards. And then Cody Fajardo was third with 2,970 yards. And Bo was fourth, as he was fourth in the league at 2,594 yards. Who had the most touchdown passes? Well, that went to Zach Claris with 20. And then Mike O'Reilly and Cody Fajardo tied for second, with Trevor Harris as well, with 14 each. Or Vernon Adamshouse had 14, so we had 3 quarterbacks with 14 touchdown passes, but McLeod Bethel Thompson, he had 12 touchdowns for 6th in the league. So that's just quick passing. When it comes to rushing, well, I think, William Stanback, he led the way in rushing for Montreal. He only played 12 games, and he had 193 carries for 1,176 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he only had 3 touchdowns, but he had that 1 game for 200 yards. Kadeem Carey actually was second in the league in rushing yards in 164 carries. He had 869 yards. William Stanback averaged 6.1 yards carry, while Kadeem Carey averaged 5.3 yards. However, Kadeem Carey, he actually led the league in rushing touchdowns with 7. So, actually Sean McGuire, the backup quarterback for Winnipeg, has 8, but when it comes to running backs, it actually goes to Kadeem Carey. And then third place is James Wilder Jr. in Edmonton. He had 770 yards rushing in 142 yards. And then William Powell for Saskatchewan, 160 yards and 773. And then Andrew Harris, although he was hurt, in only 7 games, he had 116 carries for 623 yards. So he could have been in the top league as well when it comes to rushing if it wasn't for injuries. Top receiver. Who was the top receiver in yards? Well, that goes to Kenny Lawler, as in 13 games, he had 1,014 yards in 64 receptions. The only receiver to break 1,000, but we only played 14 games this season. Second in the league was Brian Burnham for BC. He had 965 yards and 67 catches. Eugene Lewis was third for Montreal. He had 964 yards receiving and 62 receptions. And then Lucky Whitehead is fourth for BC. He had 932 yards and 60 receptions. And Jake Winicky rounds out the top 5 with 898 reception yards and 56 receptions. Which receiver led the league in touchdowns? That would actually go to Jake Winicky of Montreal with 11. And teammate Gene Lewis had 9 with Montreal. and Kenny Lawler was 6. So that's just the quick receiving. So on defense, when it comes to tackles, I believe, Darnell Sankey led the way in tackles with 97. And it was Jordan Williams for BC was second, 92. And then Avery Williams for Ottawa with 89. And then Micah Awi, also with Ottawa, with 74. And then Lamoni Lawrence with Hamilton for top 5 with 73. And then the leading sack master in the CFL was A.C. Leonard. He had 11 for Saskatchewan. And then teammate Jonathan Woodward had 10. And then Jackson Jeffcoat, third at 9. And then Sean Levin was tied for 4th with David Bernard of Montreal with 8. So there's a few Stampeders that are in the top 5 when it comes to leading league leaders. And then kicking, well, I'm going to say Rene Paredes had the best field goal percentage at 91.7%. Brett Lowther was second with 85.1% for Saskatchewan. David Cote with 82.1%. So I think we're set when it comes to kicking if it comes down to that. Especially with a couple game-winning field goals for Rene Paredes. So that is the stats and story part. So now let's take a look ahead, and I'll give you my plans on what I plan to do for CFL content this season. As looking ahead, the next 5 games for the CFL playoffs, well, what we know is that on Sunday, November the 28th, these will be the semifinal games. So the East semifinal will be with the Montreal Alouettes taking on the Hamilton Tiger Cats in Hamilton. That'll be 11 a.m. kickoff Mountain Time, and that is the East Final at Tim Hortons Field. And then the West semifinal, the game I'll be a little more interested in, is my Calgary Stampeders. They will be taking on the Saskatchewan Roughriders. That will be a 2:30 kickoff at Mosaic Stadium, and I did look at possibly going to make the trip, but then when I looked at scenarios and options and costs, I didn't like either one of them. So sadly, I'm not going to Saskatchewan for the West semifinal. So next weekend is the semifinals, and then when it comes to the finals on Sunday, December the 5th, the East final, well, the Toronto Argonauts will be hosting the East semifinal, either against the Montreal Alouettes or the Hamilton Tiger Cats. This will be a 10:30 kickoff Mountain at BMO Field, so the game started a half an hour earlier in the finals. And then on Sunday, December the 5th as well, the West final, as the Winnipeg Blue Bombers will be hosting either my Calgary Stampeders or the Saskatchewan Roughriders. That will be at 2 o'clock kickoff at IG Field, and that will be on Sunday, December the 5th. And then the big game on Sunday, December the 12th. Obviously, whoever wins the East Final and the West Final will be taking on the 108th Grey Cup in Hamilton, Ontario. This will be a 4 p.m. kickoff at Tim Hortons Field. So that's looking ahead to the CFL playoffs. So the next episode for my Calgary Stampeders this month is I'll be recapping at least the West semifinal game, and I'll do a full recap of the 108th Grey Cup. So that's what I plan to do for the next episode. Best case scenario will be there'll be 3 games, they'll fully recap, and we win the Grey Cup. But at least in the next episode, I'll recap the West semifinal and then the 108th Grey Cup, depending on how it goes. But also what I'll do once again this season is my On the Road to the Grey Cup videos will be back. Probably will try to record it Thursday. If I have the time, I'll do 5 videos previewing all 5 games, the East, the West semifinal, the East and West final, and the 108th Grey Cup, where I'll break it down. I'll basically regurgitate what I read and break down the matchup, give my thoughts and feelings, and give you my pick, who I think is going to win that game, pick-em style with confidence. And then with this Wiz Smart Ball behind me, I think I'll pick the color of the team that I'll reveal at the end of the video on who I think is going to win that game. So I'll do that again this year. So watch for that for my On the Road to the Grey Cup videos. And then I've decided on my Brett Hornby Shorts channel all season I've been doing the quick post-game recap of Calgary Stampeder games. Given I'm a CFL fan as well, I'll do a quick post-game recap on all 5 playoff games, regardless who is playing. So that was what I plan to do for CFL content. So after the Grey Cup, whoever wins, I'll be back with one more episode of my Calgary Stampeders this month, recapping the playoffs and whoever happens to win. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, I just want to say thanks for watching for my Calgary Stampeders this month up to this point, as well as my Calgary Stampeders game day video posts, and I'll continue with that as long as we keep playing. So at least there'll be one more game day video post as I'll tee up the Calgary Stampeders and the Saskatchewan Roughriders in the West semi-final, but hopefully in a couple weeks we'll be taking on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers at IG Field. And then 3 weeks from now, hopefully we'll be taking on whoever comes out of the East at Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton. And then hopefully I'll be needing to be really drunk, celebrating, really happy at the end of the day on Sunday, November 12th, and to nurse the hangover the next day, and hopefully taking an extra long lunch break the next day to celebrate them coming back at City Hall with the Grey Cup. I can dream, but at least it's one game at a time, and we're in the playoffs. And if you asked me a couple months ago, I didn't think we'd be making the playoffs. I was really down after that Hamilton game, but I am feeling a lot more optimistic about my Calgary Stampeders potentially getting there. Especially we've gotten healthier. If the right bow shows up, about getting Trey Robertson and Reggie Begelton back, and if Kadeem Carey, I'm going to say, if he ran like he does against Saskatchewan all season, I like our chances of being in Hamilton, hoisting the Grey Cup with red and white confetti around it. But to be honest with you, after last year, not having a Grey Cup, not having a CFL season, I'm just going to be happy that we have a Grey Cup this year, and I'll see it hoisted either way for wherever fan base it is. Of course, you always know where my allegiance lies, but and then I guess in the next bonus episode, I'll share a couple moments that I bumped into throughout the season and a couple selfies that I took in enemy territory. So anyways, I'd like to say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, home of the Flames, Sabin, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, I mostly do talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel, recapping games and stories, like this for example. But I also do a variety of non-sports content, like burst vlogs, attempt comedy, and also do share my experience I'm on the road or at a sporting event. And I've done some vlogging to go, and then of course my second channel, Brett Hornby Shorts, where I post my short form content on there as well. So if that all sounds like it'd be interesting to watch, to follow along this Calgary sports fan's journey, you know what to do, just make sure you like and subscribe. I also have my other social links down in the description below. So I appreciate you like and subscribe on my main channel here and my second channel in Brett Hornby Shorts. So I'm going to say, let's bring on the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I'm definitely looking forward to the CFL playoffs. Yeah, I had to wait 3 more weeks, but I'm just happy we've had it. Hopefully next season things can rebound and fans can come back as we slowly get a little more normal and more people are able to be more comfortable to go out and be able to afford to go out. But I was glad that I was able to get back to the games this season. Got to at least catch 2 football games on the road, and I'm just glad that I was able to connect with the fans. But sadly, unless I win my way to the Grey Cup this year, I haven't got a phone call or email yet. No, I don't see one yet saying I've won a trip to Hamilton. Sadly, I won't be going this year, but I'll try to go next year. It was just tough to make plans in advance this year with what's been going on. Of course, you know, too poor as well with what's been going on. But there's always next year in Saskatchewan. So I'm going to say, go Steps Go. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video and hopefully the next episode of my Calgary Stampeders this month. I'm going to be jumping over these walls because we won the championship plus championship swag here, but we'll see. We'll see. So I'll see you then.